Good morning, class. Today we are going to tackle on demand and supply, where we have the subtopic of supply. Then today's objectives are: by the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to define the term supply. The learner should be able to explain the factors on which supply demand depends on. Also, by the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to outline and explain the difference between individual and market supply. Also, the learner should be able to explain the movement and the shift along the supply curve. Those are the objectives that I would like the learners to achieve by the end of the lesson of today. Now, when we go to the introduction, we have the definition. The definition of the word supply, whereby supply is the quantity of a commodity that producers are willing and able to offer for sale at a particular market price. This is whereby you find that the seller of a certain commodity is able and also willing to supply that certain commodity according to the price which is at the market. For example, we will find that we have suppliers of maize, and you find that the price of maize per kilo in the market is 40 bob. So, if the suppliers are willing and able to supply maize at that rate of 40 bob per kilo of maize, then that is what we call supply. Now we have the factors on which supply of a commodity depend on. So it will depend, the factors supply of a commodity will depend on certain factors, and the factors include, we have one where we have the price of the commodity. You will find that if a price of a certain commodity increases, the suppliers are willing to supply more of that certain commodity to the market. And also, when the price of that commodity decreases, also the suppliers will not be willing to supply enough commodity to the market. So that's why we say the price, if the price of a commodity increases, its supply increases and vice versa. So under the price, we can also say the change in the supply with respect to the change in price is termed as variation in supply of a commodity. The change in the supply with respect to the change in price is termed as the variation in supply of a commodity. So if the price of a commodity increases, the supply will also increase. And if the price of a commodity will decrease, the supply of that commodity will decrease. Number 2, we have the cost of production. This implies that the supply of a product will decrease if the cost of production increases and vice versa. This is whereby you find that the cost which is used to produce a certain commodity, if it increases, then the production, the amount which will be used to produce the same quantity will be high. So the product, because of the cost of production increase, the products produced will be low. So the supply of the products will also be low, and vice versa. When the cost of production decreases, the supply will increase because the producers will supply more and at the same cost of production. So increasing the supply of that commodity. Then number 3, we have the natural conditions. When you talk of natural conditions, we talk of things like drought, rain, things like the epidemics, that is pandemics like corona. We have rain, we have floods, drought. So climatic changes will directly affect the supply of a certain commodity. For example, when it is during the rain season, the supply of umbrellas is higher than when it is on dry seasons. So the production of umbrellas will be high, and the demand and the supply of the products will be also high, whereby it might also increase the price of that commodity. Then we have technology. A better advanced technology increases the production of a product, which results in increasing supply of that product, whereby we find that if the technology is high, it might reduce the cost of production, hence bringing up the supply of the commodity to be high. And also, due to good technology, it might lead to faster production of products, and also supply will be easy of that product due to increasing technology. And then we have price of related goods. This is where you have related goods are like, you have like cars and petrol. Those are not related, complementary goods. We have like cars and petrol. You cannot use a car without the petrol. So if the price of the cars go down, it means that so many people will buy the cars, hence increasing the supply of petrol. Also, for the substitute goods, we have like tea and coffee. This is whereby if the cost of one product increases, then it will increase the supply of that commodity. Like if the price of coffee increases, so many farmers will go and plant coffee, and also producers will produce coffee more because of the high cost of that commodity. So that's why we say this refers to the fact that the price of substitute and the complementary goods also affect the supply of a product. Okay, now we go to the difference. We have what we call individual and market supply. So we got to see the difference between the individual and the market supply. So individual supply to the quantity, it refers to the quantity supplied by a single seller, while market supply refers to the quantity supplied by all sellers in the market. This is whereby a certain individual supplies, the quantity supplied by a certain individual, to the market, while the market supply refers to the quantity supplied by all sellers in that market. So if in the market supply is where if we have 10 sellers in that market, the total quantity supplied by them, that is what we call the market supply. Then we go to the differences between the individual and market supply. We say individual supply is shown by an individual supply schedule and individual supply curve, while market supply is shown by market supply schedule and market supply curve. Then individual supply curve is component of market supply, while market supply is an aggregation of individual supply or individual curve. So individual supply is only one component of a market supply. This individual supplier is one of the many market suppliers we have. And also the market supply is aggregation of individual curve. Market supply is a combination of individual suppliers or individual supply. Okay, Individual supply curve is relatively steeper, while the market supply curve is relatively flatter. Then we have individual supply does not follow the law of supply, while the market supply always follow the law of supply. For the shift and the movement along the curve, that will be an assignment. They will be done as an individual assignment to be submitted in the next class. So learners, that is what we have gone through, where we have the definition of supply, factors that a commodity, the supply of commodities depends on. Then we have looked on the individual and market supply, where we have also looked at the differences between supply and market, individual supply and market supply. Thank you for your cooperation in the class.